¿Se puede o no se puede? Si se puede. Good. We are going to hear now from Arnold. He is a member of the Harbor City Neighborhood Council, a former candidate for City Council District 15, and a current candidate of the State Assembly District number 66. And we applaud all of those elected officials and people running for office taking the bold anti-war statement that we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to say, growing up, I grew up back in the 60s. My dad served in World War II with the Navy. After he got out of the Navy, he and my mom met. My mom also worked with the Navy. And they met in San Diego. My dad ended up being an engineer and ended up working for Lockheed Skunk Works, building all the top secret aircraft, the U-2, all the spy planes, and I can't tell you all the aircraft he worked on, but he did. So that was the mentality I grew up with, along with the Vietnam War that we were seeing live every day on TV. So you can imagine all of us who are around my age, what we grew up with the conflict between what we saw as far as the economy, but also with the results of that economy on our screen every day. So I ended up going to UCLA, graduated, got out of college, and soon I got a job offer with, surprisingly, the U.S. Navy, which is not what I was looking forward to, but it was there, it was easy, and I took it. And I went to San Diego. I got to fly onto an aircraft carrier, got to be launched off an aircraft carrier. I got to go back to Philadelphia and work with inventory management for Navy aircraft, see some of those parts that we were selling to Saudi Arabia, and wondering, why are we selling parts to Saudi Arabia? It seemed strange to me at the time, but I quickly learned to understand later why we were doing that. So I continued with the United States Air Force, and like I said, I was skeptical when I got in, but I thought, well, we learned from Vietnam, our politicians will know better, and I'll be in the Department of Defense, we'll be defensive, we won't be offensive. Well, I was wrong. Through my career, what we saw happen was the Iran-Contra situation. Did we learn from Vietnam? No, we didn't. We got involved in Iran-Contra. Did we learn from that? We overthrew Noriega in Panama, who used to be our friend, until we decided he wasn't. Did we learn from that? No, we invaded Grenada. Did we learn from that? Russia invaded Afghanistan, and we decided to support the Mujahideen with weapons. Weapons that we now call weapons of mass destruction, that we call back then biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons. And you would think we learned from that, because after all, Russia was defeated and went back, and their economy was decimated. So you would think that we would have learned from that and learned not to take the same path. But we didn't. We got involved in Iraq War I, supposedly defending Kuwait. Were we really defending Kuwait, or were we defending oil and resources? And surprisingly, what happened after that? We ended up with blowback from 9/11. And after 9/11 happened, did we learn that maybe we should have not been involved in the Middle East? No, we doubled down in the Middle East. We started Iraq War #2, and I was among probably many of you in Los Angeles out in January and February of 2003 downtown at Hollywood in Highland, with the other 100,000 people just in the city of Los Angeles, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of people across the United States and across the world protesting against our being involved in that Iraq War. Have we learned? It's, 14 years later, we're still there. During that entire time, I still had my progressive beliefs, my progressive feelings. I had my John Lennon posters up, my Cesar Chavez posters up. I was involved in all the progressive movements. But at the same time, I was going to work and supporting this military-industrial complex. Kind of a confusing situation, but I survived it. I'd like to give you a couple references, because later in the week, one of the things we're going to talk about is books, not bombs. I'd like to suggest a reading for everybody. Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. If you haven't read it, please do, and if you don't have time, at least go to Wikipedia and read the summary of it. You'll find out how the United States gets involved with other countries, supposedly peacefully, to help those countries, and then turns the switch and extracts all the resources from those countries. And if they don't cooperate, what do? We start a war with those countries. And the other thing I'd like to end with is a little bit of a message from a movie from 1964 that James Garner was in, for those of you old enough to remember James Garner. And it explains a little bit about the psychology of war and why that psychology continues. At the time in the movie, James Garner played a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and he was in England, in London, England, just prior to D-Day. And in this one scene, he's with his girlfriend in the backyard, and they're speaking with the girlfriend's mother. And they discuss the ongoing World War II. And the mother talks about how it's the ministers of defense and the generals that are to blame for it. And that after the war, of course, they'll be writing the books about how we could have avoided war in the first place and the profit that they'll make. And it was a really interesting response that James Garner gave to that. He said, "Ma'am, we shall never end war by blaming it on the ministers and generals or warmongering industrialists. It is the rest of us. It's the rest of us who build statues to those generals and name boulevards after those ministers. It's the rest of us who make heroes of our dead and shrines of our battlefields. We perpetuate war by exalting its sacrifices," which is what we see this week with Fleet Week. He went on and said, my brother died at Antietam, and my mother insists that he died a brave death and pretends to be very proud. He said, "You know, Mrs. Barham, now my other brother can't wait to reach enlistment age, and that'll be in September." And he said, "The least the rest of us can do, the rest of us here, today," he said then in that movie, "the least the rest of us can do is to insist on not honoring the institution of war. What has my mother got from pretending that war is admirable? She's under constant sedation and terrified that her last son may run off to be brave." And I just want to leave you with that and thank everybody here, because I think we are the ones that are making sure that we don't exalt war. So thank you.
First of all, what great sound we have. And I want to let you know that this sound is coming to you solar powered. So we're trying to walk our talk. Woo-hoo! And that John Lackner is at the board right now. He is also a Navy veteran, and so we applaud John Lackner for great sound today. I want to, before we have our next speaker, we just have a couple of more speakers, and then we're going to be letting you all know the various activities you can come down and join us for Peace Week. I want to say, though, we're talking so much about spending for the military on war, to mention a quote by Martin Luther King, and that is that a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. I think a lot of us can understand the angst and the true pain that our country is going through. And what we're here to do is to clarify and to help people find true answers and not be more bamboozled, like Kaylor was talking about, into honoring what is just pain. So with that, I would like to also introduce Miguel Zuniga. He is a member of the Green Party and also a candidate for Congressional District 43.
Thank you for having me. I'm here, Rachel. I don't write my speeches, so I'm a little nervous, but that's no excuse because our soldiers don't have a choice. I'm here because I support my troops, and I don't support my troops by just putting a magnet on the back of my bumper, which is admirable. I support them by actually taking a stand and saying that we want our troops to be supported by no more wars. We want to keep them here. We're trying to keep them here safe at home with their families and only use them in states of defense. My party fights for 50% of minimizing the military expense. We want to cut the expense of that by 50%. Right now, our current politicians have just voted not only to increase it, but they also added another, $80–90 million on top. That's not resisting this Trump fascist regime at all. And one of the things that comes with the cost of these wars, besides the money, is the blood. And on top of the blood, we have an average suicide rate from all these soldiers coming back that's averaging over 20 soldiers a day. And that is very sad and ridiculous. And we need to make that stop. So by demilitarizing 50% of that, we also save 50% of these lives. It's a simple fact. 2 + 2 will always make 4. So when you deduct it, it'll come down 2. One of the problems too is the environment that these wars leave after it happens. All the uranium mining that's going on around the world and here. I call our politicians prophets of profit, because what they're doing is they start these wars with an excuse to start them, and then they profit from them on both sides of the spectrum. Whether they start a war here, they give money to the other side for weapons or whatever it takes. But in the end, what they're not talking about is, like Syria, it was a beautiful, beautiful country at one point. We all saw the pictures of what it looked like, and now look at it. It's unlivable. You wouldn't be able to farm anything on that land, and that's what we're doing to our whole planet. And what happens when we bomb and destroy the rest of the planet and we have nothing? We're living in the toxic air. The big oil is a big part of these wars, and we're dealing with the toxic air now here without a war. So if we stop these big oil wars and all this conquering for resources that we actually have here ourselves, or we replace these resources with solar and renewable energy, not only will we be saving lives, we'll be saving our environment. We need this world to live in. I need it for my children, your children, their children. We don't want to be the ones that take when they look back in history, they look at us as the reason why we don't have a planet anymore. So I want to thank all my troops that have taken the step forward to protect us, to honor us, to take an oath, to give us this beautiful country that we're in. And I'd like to ask all of us to get together and support them back by voting for politicians that won't vote for these wars, for voting for politicians that come up with proposals that'll help them when they come back from these wars. And instead of spending more money on iron metal to build another bomber to keep in a hangar so these guys can fill up their pockets, let's take some of the money and help some of these people coming back. It's just sad that we have homeless veterans. They should be heroes, and people walk right by them and don't even acknowledge that. I thank a veteran every time I see them, the minute I find out that we're a vet, whether they fought or they're getting ready to fight or they just signed on. That's a huge responsibility, and we got to show them that we're there for them even when our politicians are not. So I suggest that everybody does what they have to do and call their congressmen, their assemblymen, and tell them to stop pushing these wars, to stop the big oil, and to start pushing renewable energy, because this is a big part of our fight. This is our war, and we do it from the inside, so they don't have to do it on the outside. Thank you, everybody that's here. I love you guys all, because you guys love everybody just as much. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel, for mentioning the environmental costs of war. We're all sitting here. It's a pretty hot day. It's going to be a hot week in Los Angeles. But we all know that the Middle East is just a naturally super, super hot place. And some people don't think when they think about Syria. Syria has been in an extreme drought for 6 or 7 or 8 years. Do you think possibly with hundreds of thousands of farmers losing their land, do you think possibly that that is part of a cause of disruption and discord in the country? We are here to say that you don't blame the victim, you don't bomb the people who are running from climate change, you help us all together. How fascinating. How fascinating would a world be and the economy be if what we did was to actually solve the problems? Students ask me all the time about ideas for a new economy, and I say, what if we address the problems of a community, of our society, with the jobs to meet those challenges, instead of running away and building for more wars? So thank you, Miguel. And I would like to now bring up the wonderful Dr. Bill Honignan. He is of Progressive Democrats of America. He is a physician and a California State Coordinator of Healthcare as a Human Right. Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Yay!
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, all the terrific and committed speakers that we had already. We're here at the Liberty Hill Monument on Liberty Hill. It's, let's see, it's California Registered Historical Landmark number 1021. It has such a great history. But I want to thank the organizers of the LA Harbor Peace Week, and specifically for competing with the LA Harbor Fleet Week, because of those of us who want peace in the world know it's at least equally important. My name is Dr. Bill Honignan. I'm an emergency room physician from Orange County and a longtime activist and advocate for peace and economic and social justice. I organize for the national grassroots group Progressive Democrats of America, PDA. Woo, PDA. And our motto is healthcare, not warfare. Our stickers. Healthcare, not warfare. I'm honored to be here together with these great fellow activists and mindful of the history of Liberty Hill, the 1923 maritime strike in which mass arrests of the Wobblies and the author and advocate for social justice Upton Sinclair himself was arrested after reciting the First Amendment as a means to support the right to peaceably assemble. And we're here today to do exactly that for the cause of peace. My background as an emergency room doctor for over 30 years and being a bit of a political junkie has allowed me a unique perspective on the effects of trauma and stress on our people, as well as the many failings in our day-to-day attempts to deal with the current crisis of healthcare in America. The combination of income inequality, racial and cultural biases, environmental threats and exposures, and other external pressures such as living in the only industrialized country in the world that does not have universal health care. This results in many, many physical and mental ailments, largely uncontrolled and requiring attention of me and others in the emergency room. Among those, and very significantly, would be the effects and threats of war. Post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD, is a condition now recognized worldwide that results in significant morbidity and mortality. We have seen this largely as a result of soldiers within the last 2 decades returning home from overseas operations in 2 Iraq wars, the ongoing regime change deployments in Afghanistan, and even now with on-the-ground airstrikes and drone attacks causing significant damage and loss of life in multiple theaters, including Yemen, Syria, Libya, Sudan, Somalia. We can go on and on. We have seen men and women traumatized by their war experiences, unable to lead productive lives or even, frankly, suicidal. My own nephew was deployed to Fallujah, had wanted to follow his father's footsteps and return home to a job in law enforcement, but found the experience of police work here too closely resembled his experiences there in Iraq. And he decided he just could not do that. And some might call them the lucky ones, the survivors who did not incur serious physical injury or death, leaving behind them family or dependents uncertain of where they're going next with their lives. Of course, we now know PTSD affects many more of us than just soldiers, and much needs to be done to promote peace in our own streets. Although war is by far the more visible offender, nonetheless, scapegoating groups and individuals here and abroad, militarizing our police forces with borderline constitutional practices of search and seizure, and heightened political tensions fueled by a proliferation of individuals amassing personal arsenals of assault weapons. This is all making rising to a level of public paranoia and panic. Sadly, we can point to failed political leaders and a system promoting wealth as the chief motivator before public service. We have too many politicians listening to the needs of war contractors rather than the needs of the people they were elected to serve. Healthcare, education, infrastructure, renewable energy, a myriad of governmental institutions that exist only to satisfy the constitutional goal of promoting the general welfare, fall by the wayside as we continue to prioritize war spending, with war spending perhaps being the most egregious waste of public dollars as we know it, because it's an economic dead end. Building a school, a hospital, a maglev high-speed rail, or a solar or wind farm are solid investments. Building a bomb creates only death and destruction. Some say the only way we'll ever stop what Dr. King called the madness of militarism is to reform our system of political campaign finance. That the effect of the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision set us back centuries in this regard, likely similar to those bygone days of these corporate robber barons who the Wobblies protested and fought right here in the streets of San Pedro almost 100 years ago. Ultimately, we are only as good as what we prioritize in life. Right, little guy?
You guys are special guest speaker.
As Dr. King warned us, a nation that spends more on war and military defense than on programs of social uplift approaches spiritual death. Will we continue war spending and creating more death and disability for dubious causes? Or will we, the people, decide we aren't going to take it anymore, demand and enact significant political change? Do we believe in healthcare, not warfare, windmills, not weapons, education, not incarceration, and corporations are not people? I believe we do. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, and thank you for the important work that you're doing.
Yay!
Healthcare,
Healthcare!
not warfare.
Not
Healthcare,
warfare.
not warfare. Healthcare,
Not warfare!
microphone. Okay. Well, this has been wonderful. We are wrapping up. I want to say, you know, we're about education and action. I'm glad there are so many people here today, young people learning how to be civically engaged in our wonderful town and our wonderful harbor. I want to say that during the week, as you come back for Peace Week, you will be seeing a resolution that we are making to the city of Los Angeles to reject Trump's $54 billion military budget increase. It has a bunch of whereases, but I'm just going to read the resolved. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Los Angeles, California urges the United States Congress to move our tax dollars in exactly the opposite direction posed by the President, from militarism to human and environmental needs. So all of us, let's sign this today. Please sign in. And then I want to introduce also my co-organizer of the event today, Kristen Cox from Long Beach Progressive Revolution.
Yay!
Hi. I wasn't really planning on speaking, but I just want to say peace is patriotic. And thank you for coming out.
So you'll see a lot of us around during Peace Week this week. This is our press conference. Tomorrow we are going to be out on the streets in 6th and 7th Street as they are throwing literally the party for war. We're going to be out there with a lot of information on the peace economy. Then the next day is Thursday, August 31st. We are going to be in a local art studio doing an art build. And it's free pizza, come on out, and we're also going to be having live music. So get creative. And the next day is Friday, September 1st, and San Pedro Neighbors for Peace and Justice, let's have a big shout out, is going to be holding their 742nd anti-war vigil on the corner of 1st and Gaffney. So we'll be out there with them. It's going to be 5 to 6:15. And following, it was mentioned, on Saturday, September 2nd, is going to be in the early afternoon, a Books Not Bombs down by the Fountain and the Iowa. And that evening, Saturday evening, something very special we want you to come around for, and that is the Candlelight Vigil for World Peace and Disarmament. So come on down, we have candles, we're going to be singing peace songs. They're going to be having a free concert on the Iowa. Again, more partying and recruitment activities. And we're going to be in front of the Iowa with candles and peace songs. And then lastly, or next to last, where's Pat? Come on down. Could you tell about Kristen? Yeah, come on down, Pat. So Kristen is going to tell you about what's happening on Sunday.
Okay, I guess we're having a peace picnic and memorial at San Pedro City Hall at 6th and Harbor from 11 to 2. Free ice cream.
Yeah. And we'd love to have maybe Michael Lindley. We're going to be having a live teleconference as they're doing their Arlington West in Santa Monica. We will be doing a small memorial with memorabilia here in San Pedro. And then our grand finale, we are so excited that I wanted to have Pat just mention it, and all you kids, make sure you come out. Grand finale on Labor Day. Excuse me.
On Labor Day, we're going to have something very exciting. We've never done this before. It's a way to really wrap things up for Fleet Week. We are very honored to have a very important historical ship in the history of nuclear warfare called the Golden Rule. It will be coming down. It's going first to LA. It's been up and down the coast. Now it's going to stop here in San Pedro on Labor Day. And what's going to happen is the boat is going to be joined by other mariners. So if you know somebody or you would like to join us in a boat or be a kayaktivist and join us on a kayak, we're going to bring signs like this one on these boats with the Golden Rule at the lead and go right by the USS Iowa. It's going to be very early in the morning to be timed when there's going to be a 5K run, also heavily promoted by the military. And so we want to go under that bridge very early, about 7 o'clock in the morning, with our peace flotilla when the 5K run is going over, and give the giant peace sign to the USS Iowa, because what do we want? Peace! When do we want it? Now! ¿Qué queremos? Paz! ¿Cuándo? See you there. Thank you, Rachel, for the beautiful Fleet Week.
All right.
Peace Week!
Yeah, and thank you all for coming. We'll see you again this week. Thank you. Yay, everyone's signing. Yay.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, you're welcome.
What do you want to say to your